had been referred to by any of us in our discussions. To our extreme surprise, when it was moved that we should resolve ourselves into a committee for the election of the Lord Protector, the member who had nominated Ryland rose and informed us that this candidate had resigned his pretensions. His information was at first received with silence. A confused murmur succeeded, and when the chairman declared Lord Raymond duly chosen, it amounted to a shout of applause and victory. It seemed as if, far from any dread of defeat, even if Mr. Ryland had not resigned, every voice would have been united in favour of our candidate. In fact, now that the idea of contest was dismissed, all hearts returned to their former respect and admiration of our accomplished friend. Each felt that England had never seen a protector so capable of fulfilling the arduous duties of that high office. One voice made of many voices resounded through the chamber. It syllabled the name of Raymond. He entered. I was on one of the highest seats, and saw him walk up the passage to the table of the speaker. The native modesty of his disposition conquered the joy of his triumph. He looked round timidly. A mist seemed before his eyes. Adrian, who was beside me, hastened to him, and jumping down the benches, was at his side in a moment. His appearance reanimated our friend, and when he came to speak and act, his hesitation vanished, and he shone out supreme in majesty and victory. The former protector tendered him the oaths, and presented him with the insignia of office, performing the ceremonies of installation. The house then dissolved. The chief members of the state crowded around the new magistrate, and conducted him to the palace of government. Adrian suddenly vanished, and by the time that Raymond's supporters were reduced to our intimate friends merely, returned leading Idris to congratulate her friend on his success. But where was Perdita? In securing a solicitously and unobserved retreat in case of failure, Raymond had forgotten to arrange the mode by which she was to hear of his success, and she had been too much agitated to revert to this circumstance. When Idris entered, so far had Raymond forgotten himself, that he asked for my sister. One word, which told of her mysterious disappearance, recalled him. Adrian, it is true, had already gone to seek the fugitive, imagining that her tameless anxiety had led her to the purlieus of the house, and that some sinister event detained her. But Raymond, without explaining himself, suddenly quitted us, and in another moment we heard him gallop down the street, in spite of the wind and rain that scattered tempest over the earth. We did not know how far he had to go, and soon separated, supposing that in a short time he would return to the palace with Perdita, and that they should not be sorry to find themselves alone. Perdita had arrived with her child at Dartford, weeping and inconsolable. She directed everything to be prepared for the continuance of their journey, and placing her lovely sleeping charge on a bed, passed several hours in acute suffering. Sometimes she observed the war of the elements, thinking that they also declared against her, and listened to the pattering of the rain in the gloomy despair. Sometimes she hung over the child, tracing her resemblance to the father, and fearful lest in after life she would display the same passions and uncontrollable impulses that rendered him unhappy. Again, with a gush of pride and delight, she marked in the features of her little girl the same smile of beauty that often irradiated Raymond's countenance. The sight of it soothed her. She thought of the treasure she possessed in the affections of her lord, of his accomplishments, surpassing those of his contemporaries, his genius, his devotion to her. Soon she thought, that all she possessed in the world, except him, might well be spared, nay, given with delight, a propitiatory offering, to secure the supreme good she retained in him. Soon she imagined, that fate demanded this sacrifice from her, as a mark she was devoted to Raymond, and that it must be made with cheerfulness. She figured to herself their life in the Greek isle he had selected for their retreat, her task of soothing him, her cares for the beauteous Clara, her rides in his company, her dedication of herself to his consolation. The picture then presented itself to her in such glowing colours, that she feared the reverse, and a life of magnificence and power in London, where Raymond would no longer be hers only, nor she the sole source of happiness to him. So far as she merely was concerned, she began to hope for defeat, and it was only on his account that her feelings vacillated, as she heard him gallop into the courtyard of the inn. That he should come to her alone, wetted by the storm, careless of everything except speed, what else could it mean than that, vanquished and solitary, they were to take their way from native England, the scene of shame, and hide themselves in the myrtle groves of the Grecian Isles? In a moment she was in his arms. The knowledge of his success had become so much a part of himself that he forgot that it was necessary to impart it to his companion. She only felt in his embrace a dear assurance that while he possessed her, he would not despair. "This is kind," she cried. "This is noble, my own beloved. O fear not disgrace or lowly fortune, while you have your Perdita. Fear not sorrow, while our child lives and smiles. Let us go even where you will. The love that accompanies us will prevent our regrets." Locked in his embrace, she spoke thus, and cast back her head, seeking an assent to her words in his eyes. They were sparkling with ineffable delight. "Why, my little lady protectress," said he, playfully, "what is this you say? And what pretty scheme have you woven of exile and obscurity? What a brighter web, a golden woven tissue, is that which, in truth, you ought to contemplate." He kissed her brow, but the wayward girl, half sorry at his triumph, agitated by swift change of thought, hid her face in his bosom and wept. He comforted her, he instilled into her his own hopes and desires, and soon her countenance beamed with sympathy. How very happy were they that night! How full even to bursting was their sense of joy! End of chapter 6. Recording by Måns Bro, Roslags, Finland.